So hello everyone. Let us start question number 11 of P block elements. Question is, what is the state of hybridization of carbon in CO3 2 negative, diamond and graphite? So see, first is CO3 2 negative. So in CO3 2 negative, as we have discussed, 2 negative means there are two CO single bonds and one CO double bond, right? Carbonate is like this. So this carbon in carbonate forms 3 sigma bonds. And there are 3 bond pairs as per Vesper theory and no lone pair. So it has sp2 hybridization. So in case of carbonate, carbon has sp2 hybridization, right? In diamond. So when we talk about diamond, in diamond each carbon forms 4 bonds. There is network of carbon-carbon bonds, carbon-carbon single bonds, and each carbon forms 4 sigma bonds, right, with carbon. Okay, and that's why its hybridization is sp3, right? Now in graphite, there are hexagonal ring-like structures. They are layered hexagonal layered structures. So each carbon in these layers can form how many bonds? Each carbon forms 3 bonds. Okay, and 1 electron is free per carbon atom. Okay, so as each carbon forms 3 sigma bonds, that's why each carbon is sp2 hybridized. Okay, so in carbonate and graphite, carbon is sp2 hybridized, and in diamond each carbon, there is 3-dimensional network structure and it is sp3 hybridized, right? Now question number 12. Explain the difference in properties of diamond and graphite on the basis of their structure. So as I said, that diamond exists as a 3-dimensional network solid because there is a network of covalent bonds, okay, in diamond. That's why it is the hardest substance known. It has very high density and has high melting point because of very strong carbon-carbon sigma bonds. Each carbon is forming sigma bond with other carbon and bond is very strong. That's why it has high melting point and there is a network of covalent bonds. That's why it is highly dense, right? But in graphite it is like this. So there are layered structures. See, there are successive layers, okay, hexagonal layers, and they are held together by weak van der Waals attractions. There is a weak van der Waals attraction between the layers, okay, and that's why one layer can slip over other. So it is, first of all, it is soft, it is behaving as lubricant, as a dry lubricant, okay, where oil is not used, okay, in high temperature thermometry, okay, and diamond is very hard substance that can be used as an abrasive for cutting purpose, okay, and in graphite each carbon has one free electron. That's why it is a good conductor of heat and electricity. Graphite is good conductor of heat and electricity. Diamond is bad conductor of electricity because no electron is free in diamond. Each carbon forms 4 sigma bonds. So all the electrons are in bonding state. No electron is free, right? So this is the difference in properties of a diamond and graphite. Now next question. Question number 13. Rationalize the given statements and give chemical reactions. So first is lead 2 chloride, that is PbCl2, that reacts with Cl2 to give PbCl4. Now see, lead can show two oxidation states. Lead can show +2 oxidation state as well as +4. So Pb2 plus is more stable actually, okay, than that of PbCl4 due to inert pair effect. But PbCl2, if excess of chlorine is there, then it can form PbCl4. So PbCl2 is more stable than PbCl4, but PbCl4 can be formed because lead can exist in both oxidation states, +2 as well as +4. Due to inert pair effect, Pb2 plus is more stable than Pb4 plus, but if chlorine is in excess, then it can form PbCl4. Now, Pb4 chloride is highly unstable towards heat. Again, due to inert pair effect, I told you earlier that Pb4 plus is less stable than Pb2 plus. That's why if we heat it, PbCl4 can be easily converted into PbCl2 because Pb2 plus is more stable, or we can say PbCl2 is more stable than PbCl4. But in first case, how it is formed? Because if chlorine is in excess, then it can be formed, right? Now, next question. Lead is known not to form an iodide like PbI4. Why is it so? So, Pb4 plus, it is a very strong oxidizing agent because Pb4 plus can gain 2 electrons to give Pb2 plus very easily, okay. Means Pb4 plus is a very strong oxidizing agent. At the same time, iodide ion, it is a very powerful reducing agent, so it can lose electron easily. That's why Pb4 plus, there is a redox reaction between Pb4 plus and I negative. So Pb4 plus, when comes in contact with iodide, rather than forming PbI4, it forms Pb2 plus along with I2. Okay, that's why lead is not known to form iodide like PbI4. Got it? Done? So that's it. Now suggest a reason why BF bond length in BF3 is 130 picometer, but in BF4 negative it is 143 picometer. So see, there is, first reason is in BF4 negative, the octet of boron is completed and it is pure BF single bond. Okay, in BF4 negative, at the same time boron is sp3 hybridized. So sp3 hybridized boron and F bond, it is larger or it is longer, its bond length is large, okay. But in BF3, boron forms 3 single bonds, and at the same time boron has vacant p orbital and fluorine has filled p orbital, and that's why here back donation is possible because boron is being electron deficient, it accepts electron pair from the fluorine, and there is a formation of double bond character. There is a formation of a double bond character, okay. So due to the formation of this double bond, BF bond there is double bond character. So that double bond character may be anywhere. So due to, and this is called p pi back bonding, called p pi back bonding, means there is double bond character, okay, between boron and fluorine, okay, and at the same time boron is sp2 hybridized. So boron in sp3 hybridized state is longer in length than boron in sp2, okay. So it is 130 picometer in case of bf3 due to double bond character, and at the same time due to the sp2 hybridization, okay. And in bf4 negative, boron is sp3 hybridized and it is a pure single bond. There is no back donation possible. Reason being, in bf4 negative, boron is no more electron deficient, okay. But in bf3, boron has vacant p orbital, therefore it is ready to accept electron pair from the fluorine, right. That's why bf bond length in bf4 negative is 143 picometer and bf bond length in bf3 is 130 picometer due to sp2 hybridization and partial double bond character, okay, partial double bond character because of p pi back bond, right. Now question number 15. Question number 15 is, if BCl bond has a dipole moment, explain why BCl3 molecule has zero dipole moment. So see, you know, there is an electronegativity difference between boron and chlorine, but polarity is towards chlorine. Polarity is like this, okay. So net polarity, there is a parallelogram law of vector addition. Net polarity due to these two Cl is equal to net polarity due to this BCl. Is net polarity due to one BCl is equal to net polarity due to two BCl, and they are equal and opposite to each other, and due to this symmetry, or we can say due to symmetrical distribution of these polar bonds, net polarity is equal to 0. Net dipole moment is 0 because dipole moment is a vector quantity, okay. So polarities cancel out each other in exact way, they are equal and in opposite direction. That's why though BCl bond is polar, it has dipole moment, but BCl3 molecule as a whole has zero dipole moment due to vector sum of dipole moments, right. That's it. Next, same in the case with CO2. You know, in CO2, CO bonds, both the CO bonds are polar, but polarity due to CO is cancelled by other, therefore CO2 is non-polar, its dipole moment is 0. Same reason. Now question number 16. So in question number 16, aluminum trifluoride is insoluble in anhydrous HF, but dissolves on addition of NaF. Aluminum trifluoride precipitates out of the resulting solution when gaseous BF3 is bubbled through. Give reason. So main reason is if we compare HF and NaF, sodium fluoride, it is obviously ionic. Okay, but HF, anhydrous HF, so it is covalent. Aqueous HF is ionic, okay, but because it is given anhydrous HF, so it is a covalent compound. Obviously, as we go down the group, acidic strength increases. HI is strongest acid, okay. So HF is weak acid due to high bond dissociation enthalpy, because HF bond is very difficult to break, and that's why AlF3 does not dissolve in HF. They will not attract each other, okay. That's why AlF3 does not dissolve in HF. But in NaF, it give Na plus F negative. So AlF3 is electron deficient. AlF3, it is electron deficient. So fluoride can accept electron pair, aluminum can accept electron pair from fluoride, and it gives AlF4, and it can extend its covalency beyond 4 because aluminum has vacant d orbital. That's why aluminum can form AlF6, 3 negative and 3 sodium. Okay, 3 NaF plus AlF3. Okay, so there is a formation of Na3 AlF6. Okay, but when this Na3 AlF6 it react with BF3, then what would happen? This Al Na positive, okay, and boron and aluminum, if we compare, boron can accept fluoride ion more than aluminum because boron is smaller in size. That's why BF4 negative is formed, and that will attract sodium ion along with the formation of AlF3. Fluoride ion is attracted by BF3 because of small size of boron. BF3 seems to be more electron deficient, okay, right? That's why there is a, when gaseous BF3 is bubbled through it, AlF3 precipitate out. Okay, now next, explain a reason as to why CO is poisonous. So CO and hemoglobin. First of all, what is the purpose of hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is transporting oxygen. Hemoglobin transports oxygen to the tissues. Oxyhemoglobin is formed like this. Oxygen combined with hemoglobin to give oxyhemoglobin, and then that oxyhemoglobin convert back into oxygen and hemoglobin in the tissues, and therefore oxygen is supplied to the tissues. But when carbon monoxide enters into the system inhaled by the person, then hemoglobin react with carbon monoxide and form carboxyhemoglobin, and carboxyhemoglobin is forming stronger bond than oxyhemoglobin. It is stronger than oxyhemoglobin and it cannot be reversed. That's why what happened, hemoglobin that goes on destroying, and therefore its oxygen carrying capacity is destroyed, and that first suffocation takes place, and then man dies of suffocation. If more and more carbon monoxide is inhaled, okay, then whole hemoglobin is converted into carboxyhemoglobin, no oxygen left to transport oxygen, and therefore person suffers suffocation and ultimately dies of suffocation, right? See, CO reacts with hemoglobin and form carboxyhemoglobin. and carboxyhemoglobin is very stable, more stable, 300 times more stable than oxyhemoglobin, and that's why it destroys the oxygen carrying capacity of a hemoglobin, and therefore man dies of suffocation. Done. Next question number 17. Yes, how is excess content of CO2 is responsible? How is excess content of CO2 is responsible for global warming? So keep in mind that CO2 absorbs heat. Okay, it is written excess of CO2, it absorbs heat radiated by the earth. Okay, and some of it is dissipated into the atmosphere, while the remaining part, actually what happened when sunlight fall on the earth, some of the part is dissipated into the atmosphere and remaining part is radiated. Okay, but when CO2 is there, it radiated back, but when CO2 is there, what happened? CO2 gas absorb heat, and therefore what happened? That part of the heat is radiated back to the earth. As a result, temperature of the earth increases, and this is the cause of global warming. So what is the reason actually? Because CO2 absorb the heat radiated by the earth. Actually, when earth is heated, what happened? Sunlight fall on earth. Okay, and due to that, earth is heated up and heat radiated the radiation back, heat radiations back to the atmosphere. But if CO2 is present in the atmosphere, or any gas which is IR active, or any gas which can absorb heat, there are other gases like NO2, NO, okay, that can also absorb heat. Okay, so when they absorb heat, then what happened? They, first of all, they dissipate the means heat into atmosphere first, and then remaining part is radiated back to the earth. Therefore that heat radiations remains in the lower atmosphere, and that's why temperature of the earth increases, and this is the actual cause of global warming. Okay beta, right. Next, explain the structure of diborane and boric acid. Okay, so first of all, let us see diborane. Actually, in diborane, you know, it is B2H6. So in B2H6, each boron, you know, BH3 and BH3. There are two BH3, but its simple structure cannot be formed. How is it possible? See, in B2H6, there is BH3, BH3. Two BH3 units are there, but its structure cannot be like ethane. Cannot be like ethane, because in ethane, you know, each carbon left with one electron. Therefore, they can form bond with each other. But here, there is no such an electron. That's why simple structure cannot be formed. It's like boron has 3 electrons and one orbital is vacant. Other boron, it also form bond. It is like this. See, this part, one electron, no electron. So these this is vacant orbital, okay, and this one with one electron, they overlap simultaneously with 1s orbital of hydrogen. It also overlap with 1s orbital of hydrogen, 1s orbital of hydrogen. So in this way we get two, the PHH, these are terminal hydrogens. There is 2 electron bond, is 2 center 2 electron bond, okay, but in between these there are 3 centers and 2 electron bond, PHP. It is like this. See, P is like this, okay. This is called banana bond. Three center 2 electron bond, okay, and these are terminal bonds are 2 center 2 electrons, normal bonds, and in between they are 3 center 2 electron bonds, and these 3 center 2 electron bonds are longer than the 2 center 2 electron bonds. See, 119, 134, 197-degree angle in between, 120 outside, okay. Now boric acid. So in boric acid there are PO3 2 negative units. There are PO3 2 negative units, okay. So in B you can write it like this. See, B, okay, O H, O H, O H, okay, and this will form hydrogen bond like this, O H, O H, O H. You can write 2 units only. See, this H of one form hydrogen bond with O of the other unit, O of the one form hydrogen bond with the hydrogen of the other, like this. Okay, like that's it, okay. In this way you can write the structure for boric acid. Done. Now question number 20. In question number 20, what happens when borax is heated? So what is borax first? It is Na2B4O7.10H2. Okay. When it is heated, first of all 10 water molecules are removed and we get sodium tetraborate Na2B4O7, which on further heating gives NaBO2 plus B2O3, a glassy mass, and it is used in borax bead test. When borax is heated, we get this glassy mass and is used in borax bead test. Next, when boric acid is added to water. So you know, when boric acid, we have done this before. Boric acid is electron deficient. So when water is added, it accepts OH negative ion, okay, being electron deficient, and which in turn gives H plus ion. Okay. This is also done aluminium is treated with dilute NaOH. So when aluminium is treated with dilute NaOH, we get sodium metaluminate. You can write NaAlO along with hydrogen, or you can write NaAlOH4 plus H. Okay. Next, this is also done. BF3 is Lewis acid deficient. When ammonia comes in contact with it, ammonia is a Lewis base, so there is acid base reaction. Ammonia will donate electron pair to boron, because boron is electron deficient. So there is a formation of coordinate bond, and this is called adduct. This question is in chemical bonding as well. What is the change in hybridization? So in BF3, boron is forming 3 sigma bonds. It is sp2 hybridized. In ammonia, it has 1 lone pair, 3 bond pairs. So here nitrogen is sp3 hybridized, and when they form the bond, then boron form 4 sigma bonds, 1 coordinate, 3 sigma bond, 3 covalent bonds. Okay, and nitrogen also form the same number of bonds. So each one atom, means boron as well as nitrogen, both are sp3 hybridization. So when BF3 form adduct with ammonia, then there is a change in hybridization of boron. Boron hybridization changes from sp2 to sp3, and nitrogen hybridization remains same. So that's the questions up to 20. So this is the second part of exercise of P block elements. Thank you very much for watching this video. Do like, subscribe and share my channel. God bless you all. Happy learning. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.